Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Orange County Funding Corporation. This meeting is to begin at 5:34 p.m. March 15th, Wednesday. Call the meeting to order, and our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Proof of notice is in there. Everything posted properly. We're going to acknowledge our past chairman, Mike Torelli. We presented him with a plaque, well-deserved plaque, for his reorganization of this organization. I'm just trying to think, because we're OCFC IDA, so revamping all of it, reprocuring a lot of almost all items, and we're back up and running. And we have a lot to thank Mike for the time he had put in. His knowledge of the IDA was really helpful for me moving forward. So we want to thank him again. Bill, if you'd like to say anything.
I really, as we said to him and during the start of our finance committee meeting, and I said I could get an email to the board, there frankly was no one better to be chairman during that time. I don't know that anyone could have done it the way Mike did. He said repeatedly he's made us a better IDA, he's made me a better CEO. We will miss him for sure. We're all very happy for him because we know that he's excited about his new role under the county executive. But he had to step down. He didn't want to. He wanted to continue to lead. But Mike's still there for us. He's still very interested. He stays in touch with me. He mentioned that, of course, we moved the finance committee meeting from last night because the snow. He tuned in last night. He was very disappointed. That was his must-see TV, I think. So we thank him for his service. And again, he's not going far. He's a friend in the county executive office. But yeah, we gave him a nice plaque with a gavel on it to really honor his time over the course of 3 different years.
Well-deserved, all volunteer time. So the county, thanks.
If I could just do roll call before we go further. Okay, Dean Tamburri.
Present.
Susan Walski.
Present.
Mark Green.
Present.
James Rinaldi. Dr. Vincent Odock.
Present.
Giovanni Palladino.
Present. 6.
Those are all of our members right now. Of course, with Mr. Torelli having resigned, all members are here. Staff is Kelly Riley, our project manager, myself, Bill Giovanni, CEO. We have our general counsel on, Susan Katzoff from Blue Sky Holstein, and we have Dean Brady from 88 Studios handling our audiovisual.
So moving on to the minutes for February 15th. If everybody's had a chance to review them, looking for a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Make the motion.
Second by Dr. Odock. All in favor?
Aye.
Reports, we had the 3 committee reports.
For OCFC, just the 2, because we consider Accelerator really just solely IDA.
So we have the committee reports. We have the audit committee.
Walski?
Yes, the audit committee did meet. We were given a presentation by PSK O'Connor Davies regarding our annual audit to get prepared for our Paris report. We did pass a motion to have the full board review this report in order to keep it forward in the timelines to get the Paris report submitted.
And the only other thing from the audit committee were the, thank you. Kelly watched it. All set, thank you.
Then Jim, regarding the finance committee.
Met the budget, investments, financials, and the CDs, and the rest of the CDs, we have some that are about to be due, some to be due in a couple of months, but at our meeting, we resolved that we would take the one that was about to be due and held it into our checking account until we got the ones for May. And as a group, that time, that's what rates we would get, and then reinvest them with TD Bank, which holds the majority of our investments. And the financials, mirror of last month, nothing unusual in there. Well, we also discussed the signatures, which are dual signatures on the checking accounts. We're going to continue on with that for a period of time, 3 months, at which time we're going to discuss reducing it to a certain dollar amount with one signature. Above that amount, 2 signatures. Things flow a little bit better.
Very good. Thank you.
Now, when you say dollar amount now, that will be a total.
Yeah, so we haven't come up with an amount yet, so we're giving it 3 months to see what would flow, where one signature would be what was required. And now it could be 1,000, 1,500, 2,500. It depends on the flow of money during that period of time where we wouldn't need to bother once it's signed, where it just
Yeah, so Dr. Odak, we discussed it, and we're going to bring it to this, we're going to be discussing it in new business as well at this meeting. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. And to begin under new business for approval of the February financials. And we do not have RBT with us tonight.
We don't, but we did go over the February financials and the February, March payables in exact detail in finance a few minutes ago. And the committee did recommend to the full board, they approved a recommendation to the full board to approve our February financials, February, March payables, the latest resiliency loan fund update. That's it for now. So we are looking for those approvals. Approval of February financials and February March payables.
Motion for each one.
Sure.
So I'll make the motion to approve the February financials as presented.
Second.
Second, two. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the February, March payables. Motion
Make a motion.
by Sue. Second. Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. Final was approval of the COVID-19 resiliency home fund update. Looking for a motion for that. Mark, thank you.
Second it.
Sue, second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passed. And we'll move on to the audit from Connor Davies.
So what, we have the IJ and the CFC included in here. Did you want us to go over just the CFC portion?
If you could, and I should introduce you, I apologize for not introducing you at the top, Melissa Zopp, and Colleen, Harris, sorry, excuse me. And they've been working very, very hard on this 2022 audit, with our staff. They did present last week's audit committee, and yes, if you would give us the OCFC portion of the audit
Great.
today.
So if we did prepare a PowerPoint slide for you, it's the orange cover, and so it doesn't contain both, but we'll focus on the CFC. If you go to slide 3, these are our required communications that we're required to communicate to you. The management and those charged with governance have certain responsibilities as part of the audit. That includes selecting and implementing, it's slide 3.
Right, required communication.
Yeah, required communication.
Page 11, in your packet.
But, yeah, on the right side.
Oh,
there is-
got
there is
it.
a-
Thank you. So these are the required communications. Management and those charged with governance have certain responsibilities as part of the audit. Part of that is including selecting and implementing appropriate policies to ensure that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with the U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. In addition, there should be an establishment of effective internal controls, and then throughout the year, just reviewing those internal controls to ensure that they're maintaining effective. You should ensure that there's compliance with all of the laws and regulations in accordance with your contract, and then provide all of the financial records that we request as part of the audit. And I just want to, again, give a big thank you to Bill, Kelly, and Marty, because we do ask a lot from them as part of the audit, and they've been very responsive on all of our requests. So thank you very much. If we go to the next slide, In addition to your responsibilities us as auditors, we also have responsibilities. We do form and express an opinion. For an auditor's opinion, we anticipate issuing an unmodified opinion. It's also called a clean opinion. This is the best opinion that you can receive. We also issue a yellow book report that's on the compliance and internal controls, and then we issue an investment report as well. Communicate in writing any deficiencies in internal controls, which we do have a management letter included in your packet. There were no significant findings in that letter. It was all just housekeeping. We do advise management of the accounting policies. We would take your accounting policies, review them, make sure that they're appropriate. We would communicate any fraud or illegal acts, which we're fortunate to report that there were none in 22. We didn't encounter any significant difficulties or any disagreements with management, and there were no uncorrected misstatements noted, so any adjustments were posted. And then, as always, as part of our audit, we do maintain auditor independence. So if you skip forward to slide 11, that's going to be the CFC portion. So I'll kind of go over to Colleen, which is page 14. Page 14.
So I'll go through the year-over-year changes for the OCFC, starting with the income statement. On our page 11, your page 14, we have the operating revenues, expenses, and your ending net position. You'll see that the biggest thing to note here is in 22, you had closing fees and application fees related to Mount St. Mary's closing. And last year, you didn't have any of those, so you have 108,000 roughly in operating revenue this year. If you look down to your expenses, that negative 14,579 for the bad debt expense will make more sense when I go over the year-over-year change for the balance sheet. So I'll come back to that, but your expenses overall were relatively in line with the prior year. So if you go to the next page where you have your balance sheet, I first want to point out you'll see your loan net of allowance under the assets column went from 107,000 last year to 15,646. That's because you collected most of those receivables, and as a result of that, your allowance for doubtful accounts was reduced. That's why you see that negative on the bad debt expense, because we adjusted your allowance down for the amounts that you collected. And then if you go further down, the assets and liabilities were relatively in line with the prior year. Look down to your net position, you'll see that we have two categories under your unrestricted. You have designated and the undesignated. Last year, under designated, we had $1 million for various project expenses. In 2022, that dropped down to the undesignated, and under designated, there was roughly $1,000 for the current year. So overall, your total net position, you ended the year with 1.8 million versus the 1.7 from the prior year. Not too much really going on with the OCFC. Like that.
Yeah, that sounds good. So that would conclude our presentation for the CFC. If you have any questions, we can send them.
Any questions for Melissa or Colleen? Motion to accept the report as presented.
I'll make that motion.
A motion, a second by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Pass. So the last item is we discussed the signatures for signing of the checks to close out the meeting. So we had our finance meeting, and we discussed, we had myself and Mike signing the checks. We talked about having Bill and Dr. Odock as signatures, so as that we can, simply because of reasons, because Dr. Odock and myself are closer to the office, and also, obviously, Bill can sign as well if one of us are present. We always go over them. They'll be still listed on all our sheets. And we also talked about, as possibly even having the CEO have the ability to phone, but we're not quite at that point yet. We thought we would revisit that in about 3 months or so. So if anybody has any questions or wants to understand how that's going to work or whatever, so we can get Kelly to do the signature cards moving forward. Does anybody have any questions?
I think that's a good idea. I know you're acting chair, but until we get our, 7th member,
Mhm.
I think, to start rearranging all that at this time might not be prudent.
We also think it's a good time to add the CEO as a signature.
Absolutely, yeah.
So with that, looking for a motion to have the CEO have the authority to sign checks, as with Dr. Odak and myself. There's 2 signatures that are required moving forward.
So, if one person is out, other 2 can always sign, right?
Correct.
Okay, so 3 on that.
No, there would only be 2 necessary.
Necessary.
Let's say,
Qualified.
let's say the dean's out of town
Yes.
and checks need to be signed, then we're gonna ask you to sign with, but it doesn't have to be all 3 of you signing.
Okay, so if you're not around, then,
Correct.
So it's an alternate.
Are you all right with that, Dr. Odak?
yeah, an alternate.
Yes. Yes. Okay. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to go ahead with.
I'll make the motion.
Procedure.
I'll second that.
Second by Sue. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. We have anything else on the OCFC?
OCFC.
Okay, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn OCFC. I'll make the motion to adjourn OCFC 5:51 p.m. Second by Mark Green. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed. Meeting adjourned. On to the IDA. So we're going to begin the IDA meeting, 5:51 p.m. The meeting is called to order. We already did the pledge of allegiance to the flag. Roll call of officers.
Do that again? Dean, we should. Dean Timber,
Here.
Susan Walke,
Here.
Mark Green,
Present.
James Rinaldi, Dr. Vincent Odak,
President.
Giovanni Palladino.
Present.
All 6 members are here. And again, same staff, Kelly Riley, myself, Susan Katzoff, our general counsel, Dean Brady, our audiovisual manager. We have our 2 desks from PKF O'Connor Davies, Melissa Zott, and Colleen Harris. And we have Catherine Lemmer, who's joining us from Goshen Public Library. Thank you for being here. She was at our last meeting. We've been talking about some things in between, and appreciate the meeting. Thanks.
Bill, is there any way that we can, if everybody's, we move right on to the audit, let them do the audit, so we can
Absolutely.
excuse them? I would rather do
Absolutely. That would be great.
Is that okay with everyone?
Okay.
Well, proof of notice, we have a proof of notice, that's.
That's on page 2.
That's the.
The meeting was properly noticed.
And then we'll jump right back up to the minutes after, Melissa and Colleen, review the, finance, if that's okay.
Melissa, Colleen, please.
Thank
Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it. Do you want me to go over the required communications again? They would be.
If necessary?
Please don't.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. I thought you said it.
The important part, I guess, out of the whole thing is that we do anticipate also issuing a modified opinion for the IDA, which is an opinion or the best opinion. So if you go to page 18. So that's going to be year over year. We're going to talk about year over year change summary. We'll go into the details a little bit and then talk about the balance. So if we look at the year over year change summary, you can see overall that your total operating revenues were about $536,000 in 22. It dropped down about $1.6 million. We'll go over that on the next. Your total operating expenses were at $1.1 million. That brought you down to a loss of operations of about $582,000. In addition to operating activities, you also have non-operating items like interest income you can see that you do have a loss on disposal of assets, about $422,000, and that was due to the winding down of the Orange County at this. So there were certain disposals of fixed assets. So that brought you down to your total net change in net position to $962,000. So you went from the start of the year, $10.4 million, and you ended at $9.4 million. So what exactly happened during the year? If you go to the next page, this page focuses on your revenue. The first line item is going to be your closing fees. You can see that that went from $343,000 to this year only $195,000. This year was due to the closing of the project West Warwick Energy Storage number 1, 2, and 3. So that made up the entire $195,000. You go down a couple of lines to your administrative fees. It dropped from $491,000 to $204,000. Did have a multi-year engagement with IBM, and that would make up a majority of that. The agreement is over now, so that we wouldn't anticipate more revenue. The largest item on here is your other income. That went from $1.2 million down to $50,000. Last year, there was about $1.265 million paid in restitution related to the 2021. Obviously, wouldn't expect that. That's the makeup of your $579,000 in revenues, both operating and then your interest. If we go to the next slide, these are your expenses. You can see on the change column, a lot of the items did end up going down from last year to this year. Your rent expense, obviously, if your rent expense goes down, your utilities go down. And the decrease for a majority of these categories was also related to the winding down of the Orange County Business Accelerator. So if it's winding down, you're going to have less expenses associated with that. That shows the major operating expenses at about $921,000. There were other smaller operating expenses of $217,000. Then you had your loss on disposal, which we previously discussed, and that brought you to your total expenses of about $1.5 million. On your balance sheet, the next page, this is your assets and your liabilities. You can see that you have cash and investments. Your investments are in savings. You see that there were a movement from the cash and equivalents, which are less than 90 days, to the investments over 90 days. Overall, the net is not significant. It would relate solely to the net income. The due from other governments did stay the same year over year, but it was fully collected on January 18th, so that's important to note. The decrease in your capital assets is the last item on total assets. That's again related to the Business Accelerator winding down and is directly related to that loss. Your liabilities relatively stayed the same year over year. So if you take the difference between your assets and your liabilities, that brings you down to your net position. You have two main categories, your investment and capital assets. That's how much of your position is related to your capital assets. Then you have two unrestricted, similar to the CFC, where you have designated and undesignated. Your designated solely relates to what you anticipate spending in 2023. You have $225,000 related to the Shovel Ready program, and then you drop down to your undesignated. That's $9.1 million that you have to spend on ID purposes. That would conclude our presentation. If anybody has any questions, we can go over them at this time.
The only thing I just want to build some of the things we discussed is like the revenues. We had some revenues come in. We thought they were going to be in 2022, and then they ended up in a couple of those items.
Yeah, like closing costs on some of the major projects that are now just starting to come in, and we were hoping it would be in 22, but just time lag, like things get out of control, yeah.
And then on the year-over-year change of expenses, I just want to comment that you can see all these negatives, and like the staff, you guys did a great job consolidating all this. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do that, and you can so putting all that out was we're looking at the numbers. There's a lot of work, so thank you. That's what I have. And that's what anybody has anything else?
I just want to mention that one of the things that you mentioned during the audit committee, that we're at the highest rate and everything, but one of the things you mentioned was we don't have a formal credit card, policy, and we mentioned that's on the list of things to do to see who else, you know, see if we can borrow somebody else's.
Yes,
and so, but that was probably the one thing that came about that, you know, we didn't have. So we're on that and we're gonna correct that and have that.
Do you think we should look at other IDAs? Can I just ask you, not Melissa, while you're with us for that policy? Are there other organizations that are just as comparable?
Yeah, so we have some example credit card policies. There are some available on our resources, so we can provide some examples to you. You can modify it to fit your needs. I'll get that to you.
The government's committee gets to deal with that.
So, with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve, financial audit report as,
I'm gonna make that motion.
Doctor, favor?
Aye.
And, with that, thank you, and, your excuse, I appreciate that.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Thanks very much, Mr. Crowley. Appreciate it. Thanks. But, and then, so moving on, we'll, move right on to the, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna read my, statement, guys. I have a statement I would like to read. I worked on it a little bit. I, think that, I mean, I wanna, say something about what's been going on in the media lately. And, so, take a few minutes, and, these are, some of the things that I wanted to say. Last few times, we haven't said anything, which I get, but it's just coming to a point where I think we have to, or I feel I have to say something. So, I just want to, address and let everybody know that these are my views, my personal views as a member of the board. And, I just want to address some of the accusations made by our New York State Senator, James Skoufis. As a board member going on 2 years now here at the IDA, simply as a resident of Orange County, to hear one of our local elected officials call this group of volunteer leaders borderline criminals, borderline corrupt, has been incredibly disappointing in so many ways. He does this while real criminals in New York go free. Having our own senator engage in this low-level name-calling, as many politicians have resorted to in these days, and terrible, disappointing, to say the least. I was disappointed that the senator created at his press conference at the IDA headquarters, saying that this is where it all goes down. Well, it doesn't all go down there. We have our meetings here and open. Meetings have always been here at the Orange County Government Center. We did that back in 2001. It's also disappointing that the center mislead the public, I believe, in some of the, especially some of the last comments that were made, thinking that this is the same group of volunteers, and I believe local leaders that were corrupt. There was a few board members that were corrupt with the CEO, with the previous CEO. And that board has been completely dismantled and it's been reorganized. They had to pay back millions of dollars. The senator knows it. It was under his watch as well. And then rather than ethical, respect of hardworking volunteers that came together and cleaned this organization up to move forward for the IDA and businesses in Orange County. It's disappointing. He fails to acknowledge that, or the fact that we quickly put the agency back together, refocusing on the mission to create quality careers and local construction jobs for the people of Orange County. One has to ask, why would anybody in the right mind want to volunteer in this board with all that what's been going on? Some people say you might be a little crazy. I get it. But I do know that that someone had to step up at the time of crisis. Someone had to pick up the pieces, put the organization back together, someone to lead at a critical time in the agency in order to continue or to move economic development forward in Orange County. Since March 2021, IDA board members have each put in well over 200 hours, did a little analysis, in their effort, all volunteered in meetings with the staff and legal counsel, reviewing lengthy applications, combining through public hearing transcripts, reading cost-benefit analysis. First and foremost, we made the IDA conduct itself 100% transparent. We report to the county legislator, the transparency to authority budget office, state controller's office, who follow our every move, and most importantly, transparent to the people of Orange County. All the documents related to any project we considered are on our website. Again, all our meetings are open to the public and reviewed online. If you'd rather watch from home. Board conducted throughout the search for a CEO. We hired someone who we believe is ethical, well-respected, has demonstrated a commitment to Orange County, to our local communities. We work with the staff to procure all services to the IDA purchases using transparent process to ensure that everything is done in the open on the level playing field. I'm proud to say in front of my fellow volunteers here tonight that we truly rebuilt this entire organization in less than 2 years' time. To be honest, I would have expected Senator Skoufis, who basically only hurled insults to us at the whole time we were working our tails off. I would expect that he maybe would say, thank you for your service to move this forward, as opposed to making those comments that he did. But no, he continues with the public for hundreds of thousands of hours as volunteers, hundreds of hours as volunteers, completely overhauling, and then revert to name calling again. No wonder volunteerism is down completely. I get it. Who wants to do this stuff? Another very disappointing fact in all of this, there's no more important issues that Senator Skoufis could be working on to help us in our efforts to bring high-paying jobs to the region. New York State suffers from some of the highest property tax in the U.S. It's also one of the most expensive states to do business in. Business face more regulation here than they do in other states. Well, we are competing with, and energy costs in New York State are through the roof. We all know that, and businesses look at all these items, they're looking to move or expand. Instead of calling us names, how we're working on some of these items and landing some of our very best companies here. Our other regions around New York have elected officials that actually partner with them in economic development, or actually game-changing projects like the chip manufacturing Micron, who's going to build a site in Syracuse. That $100 billion project will create 9,000 high-paying tech jobs, indirect create 40,000 jobs. Like I said, that's game-changing stuff. He mentioned in one of his things that he's looking at all IDAs and pilots throughout the state, but yet we all know that Micron is set to receive a 50-year pilot to help make sure that they bring that chip plant to Syracuse. As far as I'm concerned, it's better there than having it overseas or somewhere down south for New Yorkers. So there are many challenges, yet many opportunities facing Orange County. We all should be working on together for our shared future. We shouldn't just be looking for photo opportunities or the chance to put down good people, or just because we have different approaches to very challenging and complex work that we do. No one on this board enjoys giving up even $1 of vital local tax revenue, but unfortunately, because of the issues in New York that I mentioned earlier and others, tax incentives are necessary to attract, expand, retain quality employers, and also to ensure the construction labor is local. I call not only on Senator Skoufis, but all of our local officials to end the mudslinging and stop press conferences. I ask that we all instead to stand with us, to work with us, to partner with us to create a better tomorrow for the people of Orange County. That is my statement, and I appreciate the time. Thank you. Yes,
Advice from our council, what do you think about?
Do we want to add that to our executive session agenda? Dr. Overdack was just looking for a little feedback on some of the issues with the senator.
Yeah, I think you could
What do you
discuss
think?
it then.
Or an executive session?
I guess it depends on the question.
asking you, what are your opinion on some of these items are?
So
Is that correct?
I can address that, I think. If you are asking me in general what I think of Senator Skoufis's comments, I think they're misplaced. I think that this board, as well as many other IDAs throughout the state, if not all of them, follow the general municipal law, which requires you to, in what he's honing in on is this but-for question. But for the benefits, would you do the project? And if you answer yes, then you as an applicant have to go on to explain why, notwithstanding the fact that you would still do it without the benefits, why you believe the IDA should give you benefits. That question is required throughout the entire state, every single IDA. It allows a company to tell you why. And in the few instances where this board and the prior administration, I believe there's only 5 cases since 2018 where the question was answered in the affirmative. In each case, the applicant went on to give you a justifiable reason as to why they are still asking you to provide benefits. The general municipal law does not say you have to give more or less credence to that one factor. What the general municipal law says is you are to have an application that asks certain information, you are to have a cost-benefit analysis, and you are to weigh factors in determining whether or not to provide incentives to any one or more projects. This board's documentation that you keep on your website and is open to the public, and as the chairman indicated, your meetings are open, the information is public. Anyone who cares to look at it, to become informed about how you go about the process and what decisions you've made, can freely do that. And if they took the time to do that, they would see that you have analyzed your applications and you have determined that the project creates great benefits for your community, and for those reasons, you agreed to give incentives. Dr. Odak, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, but I feel insulted, you know. I think he owes us apology. And to call us criminals, I mean, I'm a volunteer here. I mean, I'm not paid for anything, but all my hours is put in, and to refer to us as criminals, he owes us an apology.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Dr. Odak, and I just, again, that was kind of part of what I maybe have a statement is that you have a question, come in and ask or whatever, or there's a reason why. It's not that we're looking to give taxpayer money away. That's not why we're here. That's not why we're here. We're all taxpayers. So, anyway, that was part of the comment.
And I'll just remind the board, because some of you weren't here at the time, but we actually very early on in after this new board was created and the new administration was put together, we actually invited Mr. Skoufis in, along with his fellow state senator at the time, Michael Martucci, and the county executive, Steve Newhouse. We had a very open discussion. It was in this building, but it was actually in the legislative conference room upstairs. We had a great discussion, but really where it ended up going was the senator kept telling us that he is trying to get a law passed for this reform. He's trying to get a law passed for that reform. And he was saying, I want you to fall under these laws, even though these proposed laws, even though they're not law yet. And really what the chairman at the time, Michael Torelli, said, and it's something I've quoted many times since, is you're asking us to operate under a set of rules that you want it to be, that you want the law to be, the general municipal law. We're going to operate, we do, and we're going to continue to operate under the law as it is written. For example, he wanted us, he said this many times, he wants us to operate like Rockland County. Well, I'll remind you, was never given the authority by their county to negotiate pilots. All they do is act as a pass-through. They help an applicant connect with, say, the school district. They negotiate their own pilot with the school district. Imagine how challenging that is. And by the way, I've got a couple dozen local officials, and because you recall that they signed on to a letter at one point where he frankly hoodwinked a number of them to sign on and recommend formally that we act like the Rockland County. So I went to most of these local leaders and said, do you know how Rockland operates? Do you know what it would mean? You wouldn't have this input. The IDA wouldn't decide. The school district would negotiate pilots. To a man and woman, they all said, oh, we don't want that. Well, that's what you signed on to. So he wants us to operate in a way that's not what the law is. And I think it's most unfortunate, not only, of course, the worst part is that you all as volunteers. I remind everyone, Kelly and I get paid for this. You're all volunteers. That's the worst part. It really is. That he's doing. But we're not gonna cut our nose off to spite our face. You know, we're gonna continue to operate, and we want local control. What he's recently recommended or tried to kind of do an end around, because his bills that he introduces go nowhere. His colleagues don't agree with them. So that was my point, is we're one of the only regions where we're just getting picked on for this. We do everything by the letter of the law. Obviously, we do well, been very successful. Frankly, we're the envy of a number of regions. Here when I go to these conferences, but he wants to shut that down. So, and then he's tried to do, again, the bills go nowhere. His most recent maneuver is to try and insert this policy into the state Senate's proposal for the state budget.
Yeah, I heard
And
that.
he tucked some of those things in there, including this requirement that we have a, what's the word? Not a moderator.
He was a special investigator or auditor or something.
The monitor, I think it is using the word monitor, where they look at follow every single decision we make, and they can reverse the decisions that you, the incentives that you grant, if they deem necessary. So it's preposterous. As I've said in the press, we're already governed closely by the authority's budget office. You mentioned that in your remarks. And the Office of State Comptrollers, as you know, we report multiple times per year. They follow up on all of those reports and ask us 20 other follow-up questions when it comes to that. So we've done all that. Everything is, we comply fully with every law, with every regulation, with every report that we have to enter. We're doing all the right things. So really for him to act as though we're doing something else and we require further monitoring is preposterous. He just wants control, and I'm going to say at this point, I really try to be polite and take the high road. I'm really struggling to do that, especially with him continuing to just, you know, throw names around and things like that. But it's wrong. You know, we're pushing back. I think the public is starting to understand it. I mean, we're getting some good feedback on this, and it's just, you know, the same song and dance.
Bill, at what point do us as board members sit here and constantly take these personal attacks? It's disgusting. He's my senator, and I'm embarrassed by it. Exactly. I've never met him. He's never come here personally to make these personal attacks. What's his political end game? Like Dean had said, criminals are walking free in this state. They're worried about if somebody can have a gas stove in their house, and he wants to come and attack probably the only thing that's pro-development, that's allowing Orange County to be competitive in a very competitive environment. I mean, at what point do we sit here and say, you know what, enough's enough? Me personally, I got pretty tough skin, but I'm getting to a point where he doesn't know me to make that kind of judgment. To me, it's slander, absolute slander.
Yeah, it is. I think
you know, at what point does our council say, you know what you're saying here? I mean, I've had 3 people come up to me today because I saw the article in the paper, and they said, well, I didn't know you were a criminal. So how does that make you feel? These are work colleagues of mine. I've spent as an architect, I'm only as good as my name. For him to make that claim, people that don't know me now are making assumptions about me. At what point do we put this guy on notice and sue him personally and tell him to stop?
Yeah.
If you want to have a debate about what we're doing, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Let's have that debate. But to sit there and call us criminals or idiots or incompetent, whatever else, this guy's incompetent. What's his end game? And I'm pissed off about it, and I've been quiet. I haven't even called you about it. But what's his end game? Either he's intellectually dishonest, right? Or he doesn't understand what we're doing, right? So for him to sit there and make these comments, he looks like a jerk, right? So I would like to ask counsel, at what point are we protected, especially our reputation?
And has he crossed the lines at this point? I mean, crossed the line, insults on us.
I will say that I think he's been very, and of course, let counsel give you her real opinion, but he's been very careful to make sure he throws the word borderline in front of corrupt and in front of criminals. I assume that is either his belief is that it's saving him from libel or slander.
But it's not. I don't see
that effect, you know. Absolutely, of course.
Right?
That's a good point. I mean, people see it, they just hear that word and are associated with it.
They don't hear the word borderline, they hear the word criminal.
He knows perception becomes true.
And if he had this idea that this was going to do it, then why did we spend so long trying to reorganize this, whatever, all along? And then if he's going to have somebody to oversee it, and who's going to want to volunteer to be 7 members that you vote, and then someone could overturn everything? And so force is going to be overturned by him. So it's basically him saying that he
wants control.
How are we going to attract business if somebody outside of Orange County, somebody up in Albany is gonna have the power to override what we're saying. Businesses are gonna be like, I'm not going through those hoops. Who would want to?
So that's what we're trying to do now in these articles. You know, to this point, I've advocated for and I followed the high road, you know, really approach where I don't want to get in the mud with him. I frankly think that all it tends to do is elongate the story because like this morning, I finally pushed back with nothing devastating, but, you know, pointing out that he's wasting taxpayer dollars with all these shenanigans. It's preposterous, really, you know, what he's done in that regard.
I think it has to cost him something personal.
Yeah.
He wants to personally attack, I mean, that's my opinion, and anybody could have something differently. But I think the state in general right now, with everything they're doing, they're pushing for this state mandated control of everything from housing to whatever. And I'm pissed of what he said to me. You know, and I want answers. I want answers, and I want to know what do I take something on my own personal? Do I hire my own attorney now and go after this guy? Right? It's ridiculous. I mean, he's a politician who's supposed to be a leader. He should act like one and not like a child.
Not the first time. Other venues get a splash, and
Question was posed, to our council. Can we get an answer perhaps?
The question about Flanders, Sue?
So what I would ask the board is to give me a few days to put together a memo for you outlining options.
I teach at the college. My students will look at me as a criminal then. That's what it means.
Dr. Roddick's saying that he works for the college and his students, you know, the students could be reading that he's a criminal and believe that that's the case.
Understood.
In fact, in some of the statements, he actually brought in the previous board and all the issues they had, and we're working to get away from that to open meetings, et cetera, and he just throws it in there. And so if anybody doesn't know, they may think.
but, yeah, I go along with you. He's a licensed professional. That goes a long way when you see somebody licensed professional and something that's not 100%.
Well, in the state of New York, for the education law, if there's this assumption that I'm doing anything criminal, I could lose my license. If the state could say, hey, I'm not going to renew your license, that's personal liability against me. That will affect my livelihood. This is what he doesn't understand because he's too stupid to understand. He's going to understand, and I want him to understand. I want him to be fearful that every time he opens his mouth and he attacks us personally, that he's got to pay for it. That's it. That's it. And if he doesn't, then he should just shut up and let's have a public debate of what IDAs do so that he understands what a pilot, what the acronym actually stands for, that we're not taking taxes out of people's hands. He needs to understand that because obviously the way he's speaking, all he's doing is for grandstanding nonsense. That's all it is. It's an ad.
Thank you, Chief. I
Thank you.
so much for my statement. Very good.
Yeah, right.
Now on to the meeting.
Let's just
All right, so you'll get back to us in a few days on that.
It is very.
I'll share with the board.
Very, very quick. Okay. Proof of notice, we said that we're to the approval of the minutes of February 15th. A chance to review those.
I will note that there's an error on the minutes for IDA where it says the year is 2022 and it's 2023. Just want to note that error.
You make that correction as part of the motion then?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make that motion with that correction. Make the motion with that correction.
Thank you, Chief. Second.
I'll second that.
So we'll approve the minutes with the correction of the date, February 6th. All in favor? Aye. Committee reports, accelerator.
Yes, we had a meeting. Basically, we spoke about the wind down of all the other buildings with the exception of the Warwick property, and are looking possibly in the future to get out from under that lease. And there is also a legal matter that will be discussed in executive session that we'll bring before the board.
Thank you. Audit?
The audit committee, we again had the presentation that you received this evening from PKF Connor O. Davies, and had made the motion to put it before this board for approval. We also had, with the battery storage, they sought a waiver of a local labor. It wasn't something that we really enjoyed doing, but it was a little after the fact, and we did reach out to our local labor monitor, was on the call, and we've gotten it more straightened out to move forward.
Just to clarify, it was essentially for the calibration of these three battery storage units. Like, one of those situations where it has to be a certified professional that's certified by the manufacturer in order to maintain the warranty. So that's typical. As I've said in some other meetings, including that meeting, we're trying to actually go the extra mile to find local options for that. We found that there are some groups, the local millwrights group, as part of the carpenters union, does some of that high-tech equipment. They took, I mentioned this months ago, they took me to the Fishkill facility of Amazon, and they installed most of the conveyor belts. So we are trying to exhaust that, but that type of labor was not applicable for this project. That's all they were looking for. Everything else on this job has been 100% local.
We just talked about moving forward, have more communication for the project begin to make sure, to ensure that we.
Little overlap in our new labor monitors coming on board with us, being oriented by us and getting out to the site, and some field work, some site work has already been done there, but they've been monitoring for several months now.
So move on, if anybody has any questions, move on to the finance. These are, I've seen reports for you.
Yes.
Yep.
As to the finance thing, I will just reiterate what I passed on the prior one as to our investment signatures on checks, review of our expenses, your image comparable to the others.
Thank you, Jim. And do we had the motion to accept those again, the IDA?
Yeah, so we accept the committee reports. Should we vote to accept them?
You don't have to vote to accept them. They're just making a report to you.
Very good.
Want me to step in here?
Yeah.
Okay, with the CEO report, I'll make this brief. First of all, I'm going to address the officers and nominations issue. It is in our bylaws too. Please correct me if I get any of this wrong, but in our bylaws that the vice chairman, who is temporary, when the chairman resigns, vice chairman becomes acting chairman. He is acting chairman right now. I will say, okay, I'm saying this out loud here, but Dean is willing to strongly consider becoming the permanent chairman, if that's what we want. But we thought that we'd let the dust settle here. We'd give him a solid month to think about that. And we also would like to replace him as vice chair with another vice chair. So we've been talking about that, we're talking with the members about that. But we thought we would kind of let the acting piece happen right now, and in April we'll come back and so that's that. I did go to, I mentioned the New York State Economic Development Council conference. It was in Albany. It was a great turnout, about 400 people there. There were some great general sessions and breakout sessions about the local labor policy. And I learned a few things, but I actually made some comments letting the rest of our IDAs know that the labor policy can really be a backstop, the way I describe it. When we're under all this kind of criticism, we're able to say, we guarantee local construction labor. So if, like Senator Skoufis has done with the Medline, for example, chase them away from the IDA, in this case, the Montgomery IDA, they got a 485B, which many of you know is essentially half a pilot for free, no expense, no application fee, no target on your back from the senator. And Medline, in order to save money, they got more than 80% of their labor from outside the region and outside. We chased those jobs away. Chase that local construction labor. So anyway, we did share that.
If they didn't deserve the tax break.
So labor policy, we also met the state, Empire State Development, that's the economic development arm for the state. We met their strategic business development department. We have of course, there are 10 regions around the state. We're in the Mid-Hudson region. We have our own office across the street from our headquarters, actually. And they work with us on the consolidated funding applications, a number of projects. But it's really the strategic business development department that's in Albany and New York City that works on the biggest deal. whole team there at the conference. You got to meet them all and hear from them. Some are focused on cybersecurity types of industry. Some are focused on tech. Some are focused on pharmaceutical manufacturing. I loved it because that's where I'm here, and I want to forge relationships with each person that runs those specific sector groups. And I want to say on the front end, well, first of all, let them know we're here and we're working on everything, and then make sure we understand what we have to do to be ready for those types of sectors. So I thought that was really an interesting session and a great opportunity to meet people behind that. And then the last general session was it was a 2-day conference. Was about it was a panel of site selectors, corporate site selectors hired by companies to find their next location, and it was a very insightful discussion. And basically, the consensus from the group was the most important thing that you can do is prepare sites for development. Sites all around the state are dwindling. They're not shovel ready. And I thought, and some of my colleagues are on the table, kind of looking at me, I thought it was incredible validation for what we're doing right here. How the foresight we've had, the investment that you all decided to make in shovel ready to identify, future developable properties. It was really a lot of validation. Speaking of that, I'll shift over to the shovel ready program. That continues to roll along. We've had a number of municipal meetings with municipal leaders talking about what sites are strategic for them and any other issues and what they do and don't want. We like to have those discussions. And then Delaware Engineering has just been accumulating a trove of data on all of these potential sites. I've said it before, we're going to be very robust. We'll have a website where you'll be able to see these sites and see GIS maps and a lot of other detail when it comes to that. So that's critical. And I will tell you that I'm going to let Delaware come and present, but I was a little worried that we weren't going to have a lot of sites that we could uncover as potentially developable, and we've got hundreds actually that's come out of it. They're very excited. They think we're in a great position. We're going to get that list, and then of course the next step for us is to decide, do we want to make any investments in any of these properties that could bring us the next micron property. So I'm excited to have them come in soon. I think Jim raised it with that and our marketing team, have them come in and give you an update of what's happening. We had, back to the Scoopus news, of course, his last press conference before yesterday, I guess it was opening an investigation through behalf of the chair of the New York State Senate Investigations Committee and Government Operations. He has those reins, so he can do anything he likes here. He opened an investigation into our Milmar, aka Mac Brothers investigation. We actually just submitted all those responses today. Today was the deadline. Kelly Marty especially doing the yeoman's work on that and working with Sue's team to make sure we had done that. We've done it, we've put it in. I mean, I frankly think it's another example of a waste of time. There's nothing to look at there. I did talk to a number of my colleagues at the conference a couple of weeks ago because he's approached them. I mean, they're all incredibly frustrated and also sympathetic with what we're going through. They think we're doing a good job and frustrated by that. The headquarters update. We had all agreed, you had all agreed to authorize us to enter into a lease at 555 Hudson Valley Avenue with our landlord, same landlord as we have now, First Columbia. Well, I got a call Monday from the head of First Columbia, our lead landlord, saying that they committed the space to Colliers, formerly known as Mazer Consulting. They are in a unit next to the space we were looking at. They were looking to bring some new engineers in and put them there. I certainly protested. I did when I first heard this, and I worked to counteract it. And then Monday, I expressed my displeasure. They basically took another $2 a square foot from the other potential tenant, and I had let them know, their property lease manager said, in no way are we interested in getting in. Frankly, it was top dollar space, and it was a very soft office market right now. It was, Giovanni can tell you, he's developed space like that as well. It was really top tier. I thought it was a great space for us, really ideal, but I don't think we're going to overpay for that space. The alternative right now is we're going to look at some other options outside the airport, but in the vicinity. We may give another look to the unit across the street where Empire State Development is, 33 Airport Center Drive. But what seems to be the most likely, probably the best avenue for us to stay right where we are at 4 Friday Lane. We have far too much space, but we would just use what we need. And the landlord intimated to me that he could negotiate, give us a rental rate that's basically comparable to what we'd be paying at Hudson Valley Avenue to stay right where we are, save the moving expenses, save any of the heartache in that regard. That's where we stand. I'm disappointed and frustrated. It made it a tough week, first half of the week, but it is what it is. And the last piece is local labor. I've said this a few times, but I've said in audit committee, we're working very closely with our new monitors, Stellinger Engineering out of Middletown and Land out of Goshen. And we're working, like I talked about with the audit committee meeting, the waivers, this, that, and the other. We are, you can be proud and know at full faith, we are going every inch we can to try and ensure that labor is paid. We are trying to balance that between making every single effort and really pushing and supporting the project in meeting that, but we're also trying to balance that with not grinding a project to a halt or moving away developers, pushing away developers. If that gets out that our local labor policy is so onerous and not reasonable and we're inflexible, that could be another reason, in addition to everything else they're hearing in the media, be another reason to stay away from IDA. So that's what we're doing that. And then I have a couple of things for executive session, but that's my March move.
Thank you, Bill. Moving on to new business, looking for approval for the February financials. Those.
Of course, the finance committee just did about an hour ago in detail, and they did recommend to the committee, to the full board approval.
So I'll make a motion to approve the February financials. Second, Jim, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed. And approval of the February, March payables, again, we just went through those. Yeah. What? Thank you, Dr. Orr, made a motion for a second.
Second that?
Second, Sue, all in favor? Aye. Motion passed. And approval for the annual financial review by O'Connor Davies. Motion for that.
I'm going to make a motion that we accept the annual financial audit that was presented this evening and was endorsed by the audit committee.
Thank you. Second, Mark. Mark, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. And then we move on to the discussion of the signature changes. We've talked about it a couple of times, so anybody have any other questions regarding the what we discussed? If
You would say as a signatory, I would be added as CEO, and Dr. Odock, mostly for his proximity, would be added as well.
still only 2 signatures required, and then in 3 months we'll revisit it for any changes to the policy.
Aaron is there. Aaron is there.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Giovanni. Second. Mark, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Ask for the signatory change.
We need to deal with the one signature, please. What you're concerned about?
I said, I don't know, I mean, because the bank only requires 1, I mean, we reviewed them. I think both Jim and Mark took a look at them as well, so I don't think we have to make a motion.
Okay. Because it takes 5 days to turn over the signature, so we're all concerned about bills being late charges, that the other, so we'd like to at least be able to get bills that are timely in that regard out with 1 signature just this month is what we were looking for, because we had that little lapse.
Do you feel you?
Let me ask, if it's okay, we'll ask counsel for that.
Can you repeat the question? Because Dean cut out a little bit.
Yeah, so right now, the policy is that we need 2 signatures on a check. We're gonna have 3 signatories actually, 3 people to sign to give, 2 signatures. But right now, we're in a situation that when we add the new signatories, it's gonna take 5 days to do that. We have bills that need to get out right away, and we're looking for the board's okay to send them out with just 1 signature.
So, and those are bills that would have appeared in your financials that you just approved, correct?
All approved.
Then I think the board can authorize 1 signature on those to pay those bills.
For this month, so we should have a motion on that.
Yeah.
Before you vote, we have reviewed every check, and any questions we have been, so lots of eyes have looked at this, so it isn't.
A motion for, to send with 160. I'll make the motion.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Acting Chairman, unless there's any other business, we'd like to go into an executive session to talk about legal matters.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session for legal matters.
Second that.
Second, Sue, all in favor?
Aye.
Welcome back, everybody who's out there. We adjourned the executive session, and now we're looking for a motion to adjourn our IDA. Have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
I'll make the motion.
Giovanni, second. Dr. Oda, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Meeting is adjourned.